Few figures in modern history have had as great an impact on the world as Adolf Hitler. His rise to power in Germany and leadership of the Nazi Party helped shape the course of the 20th century, ultimately leading to World War II and the Holocaust. Understanding Hitler's early life provides important insight into the experiences and ambitions that influenced his development before he entered politics. Born in Austria rather than Germany, Hitler faced a number of personal and professional challenges during his youth, including the loss of his father and repeated failures to achieve his goal of becoming an artist. These early setbacks played a significant role in shaping the path he would later follow. Adolf Hitler was born in 1889 in the Austrian region of the Habsburg Empire. His father worked as a customs official and died while Hitler was still young. During his teenage years, Hitler aspired to become an artist and moved to Vienna in hopes of gaining admission to the Academy of Fine Arts. However, he was rejected twice by the admissions committee, which recognized his talent for drawing buildings but criticized his ability to draw people. The committee suggested that he pursue architecture instead, but because Hitler did not possess a high school diploma, he did not meet the requirements for admission to an architecture program. While living in Vienna, Hitler struggled financially and spent several years in poverty, supporting himself by selling postcards and small paintings. During this period, he became increasingly dissatisfied with the multi-ethnic nature of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and developed strong nationalist beliefs. Vienna's political climate also exposed him to widespread racial prejudice and anti-Semitic ideas that were common among some political groups and public figures of the time. These experiences and influences helped shape many of the views that would later become central to his political ideology. Pre-World War I, Vienna was a center of social Darwinism, racial theories, and political antisemitism. Several politicians openly campaigned on anti-Jewish platforms. Hitler absorbed these ideas eagerly. In 1913, Hitler left Austria and moved to Munich, Germany. When World War I began the following year, he volunteered for service in the German army and was assigned to the Western Front. During the war, he served as a messenger, a dangerous position that required carrying communications between military units under enemy fire. Hitler fought bravely, was wounded in combat, and received several decorations for courage. The experience of military service gave him a strong sense of purpose, camaraderie, and belonging, and the war became one of the most significant influences on his later political beliefs and ambitions. Before World War I, Hitler had struggled to find direction in his life. However, his experiences on the battlefield provided him with a sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging. The hardships of trench warfare, combined with the bonds formed among soldiers, convinced him that struggle and sacrifice gave life value. When Germany was defeated in 1918, Hitler was deeply shocked and devastated. Like many Germans who found it difficult to accept the nation's surrender, he embraced the stab-in-the-back myth, which falsely claimed that Germany had not been defeated militarily but had been betrayed by internal enemies. Hitler came to blame democratic politicians, Marxists, and Jews for Germany's defeat, beliefs that would later become central to his political ideology. After World War I, Hitler remained in Germany and worked for the Bavarian military and police as an informant, monitoring political organizations that were emerging during the unstable post-war years. One of the groups he was assigned to investigate was the German Workers' Party, the predecessor of the Nation Socialist German Workers' Party, whose name was shortened to the term Nazi. Although Hitler initially entered the organization as an observer, he was quickly drawn to its nationalist message and political goals. His talent for public speaking and his ability to attract supporters soon made him one of the party's most influential members. Within a short time, he rose through the ranks and eventually became the leader of the Nazi Party, transforming it from a small fringe movement into a major political force in Germany. Hitler's message appealed to many Germans who were frustrated by the country's economic problems and political instability after World War I. He promoted extreme nationalism and argued that Germans belonged to a superior race destined for greatness. Hitler blamed Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I and many of the nation's social and economic difficulties, using anti-Semitic propaganda to gain support. He also strongly opposed communism, portraying it as a threat to Germany's future. In addition, he called for the rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, which many Germans viewed as a humiliating settlement imposed after the war. By promising to restore Germany's strength, pride, and international influence, Hitler attracted a growing number of followers and expanded the Nazi Party's influence throughout the 1920s and 1930s. Inspired by Benito Mussolini's successful rise to power in Italy, Hitler sought to seize control of the German government through a dramatic show of force. In November 1923, he and his supporters launched the Beer Hall Putsch in Munich, hoping to overthrow the Bavarian government and spark a national revolution. The attempt quickly collapsed when government authorities resisted, and several participants were killed. Hitler was arrested, put on trial for treason, and sentenced to prison. Although the putsch failed, the trial brought him national attention and gave him a platform to promote his political ideas to a wider audience. While serving his prison sentence, Hitler dictated Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a book that outlined his political beliefs, goals, and vision for Germany's future. Published in 2 volumes during the 1920s, the book combined autobiography with political ideology, expressing his extreme nationalism, antisemitism, opposition to communism, and belief in German racial superiority. Hitler also described his desire to overturn the Treaty of Versailles, expand German territory, and unite all Germans under a powerful state. Mein Kampf became one of the most influential and destructive political works of the 20th century, because it openly revealed many of the policies and ambitions that the Nazi regime would later pursue after Hitler came to power. One of the most important sections of Mein Kampf focused on Hitler's core ideological beliefs. He embraced racism and social Darwinism, arguing that humanity was divided into unequal racial groups arranged in a hierarchy. According to Hitler, so-called Aryan or Germanic peoples occupied the highest position, while Jews, Roma, and other groups were falsely portrayed as inferior and dangerous. These racist ideas led him to advocate the removal and eventual extermination of people he considered threats to the German nation. Hitler also promoted a form of romantic nationalism that idealized Germany's medieval past, rural life, and the connection between blood and soil. He believed that farmers and rural communities represented the purest expression of the German people. In addition, Hitler argued that Germany needed more territory or Lebensraum, living space, to prosper. Claiming that Germany was overcrowded and weakened by urbanization, he called for territorial expansion into Eastern Europe, particularly the fertile lands of Ukraine. Because these territories were part of the Soviet Union and already inhabited by millions of people, Hitler's vision required conquest, displacement, and mass violence. These ideas later became central principles of Nazi policy and helped shape Germany's actions during World War II. Without the Great Depression, Hitler likely would have remained a minor political figure on the fringes of German politics. However, the economic crisis that began in 1929 created conditions that dramatically increased support for the Nazi Party. As businesses failed and unemployment soared, millions of Germans lost faith in the government's ability to solve the nation's problems. Widespread anger, fear, and economic hardship weakened confidence in democratic institutions and made voters more receptive to extremist solutions. Hitler capitalized on this discontent by promising jobs, economic recovery, political stability, and a revival of German national pride. He also pledged to overturn the Treaty of Versailles, which many Germans viewed as unjust, while blaming communists and Jews for the country's troubles. Although the Nazi Party never won an outright majority in a free national election, it attracted enough support to become the largest political party in Germany, positioning Hitler to gain power through legal and political means. In January 1933, a group of conservative German politicians persuaded President Paul von Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as Chancellor as part of a coalition government. Many of these political leaders believed they could use Hitler's popularity to strengthen their own positions while keeping him under control. They viewed him as a useful political ally rather than a serious threat to Germany's democratic system. However, this proved to be a disastrous miscalculation. Once in office, Hitler moved quickly to expand his power, weaken his political opponents, and dismantle democratic institutions. On the night of February 27, 1933, fire gutted the Reichstag building in Berlin, Germany's parliamentary seat, just weeks after Adolf Hitler had been appointed Chancellor. A young Dutch council communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, was found at the scene and later convicted and executed for the arson. though historians have long debated whether he acted alone or whether Nazi operatives helped set the blaze to create a pretext for repression. Most historians today lean toward the lone actor explanation. Whatever its origin, the Nazi regime moved immediately to exploit it, persuading President Paul von Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree the very next day. That decree suspended core civil liberties, freedom of the press, assembly and privacy of communications, and gave the state sweeping power to arrest political opponents, which the Nazis used to jail thousands of communists and other rivals in the following weeks. The decree, combined with the intimidation of opposition parties, helped clear the way for the Enabling Act in March 1933, which let Hitler's cabinet enact laws without parliamentary approval and effectively ended German democracy. In this way, the fire, whatever set it, became the hinge event that let the Nazi state pivot from a coalition government into a one-party dictatorship in a matter of weeks. As he solidified his power in Germany, Hitler sought to win public support through economic recovery programs. His government launched large-scale public works projects, including the construction of the Autobahn highway network, while also expanding the military and increasing industrial production. Much of this rearmament violated the restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles, but it helped reduce unemployment and stimulated economic growth. As jobs became more available and the economy improved, many Germans viewed Hitler favorably, increasing his popularity and strengthening support for the Nazi regime. Hitler established concentration camps shortly after taking power, initially using them to imprison and intimidate political opponents rather than for mass extermination. Many of the first prisoners were communists, socialists, trade union leaders, and others who challenged Nazi rule. These camps became an important tool for eliminating political opposition and silencing dissent throughout Germany. Individuals suspected of resisting the Nazi government could be arrested, detained without trial, and subjected to harsh conditions. Over time, the concentration camp system expanded dramatically and was used to persecute a wide range of groups targeted by the Nazi regime, becoming a central instrument of repression and terror in Hitler's dictatorship. On August 2, 1934, the 86-year-old Hindenburg died, leaving his office vacant. Rather than holding elections to succeed the German war hero, Hitler decided to abolish the office, combining it with his own authority as Chancellor. With no one above him to serve as any check on his power, Hitler became the Führer or leader of Germany. In 1935, Hitler's government enacted the Nuremberg Laws, a series of racial laws that institutionalized discrimination against Jews in Germany. These laws stripped Jews of German citizenship, prohibited marriages and intimate relationships between Jews and non-Jews, and excluded many Jews from professions and public life. The legislation marked a major step in the Nazi regime's campaign to isolate and marginalize Jewish people from German society. Nazi propaganda and government policies also encouraged hostility and discrimination against Jews, creating an atmosphere in which violence became increasingly common. This persecution escalated dramatically in November 1938 during Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. Across Germany and Austria, Nazi-organized mobs attacked Jewish communities, burning synagogues, destroying Jewish-owned businesses, vandalizing homes, and arresting thousands of Jewish men. Many Jews were injured or killed during the violence, while countless others were sent to concentration camps. Kristallnacht marked a turning point in Nazi anti-Jewish policies, transforming discrimination and exclusion into widespread, organized violence sponsored by the state. Perhaps the most revealing indication of Hitler's intentions came in November 1936, when he met with senior military leaders and outlined his long-term foreign policy goals. Convinced that Germany's future depended on territorial expansion, Hitler described a strategy centered on conquering Eastern Europe and creating a vast German empire. He believed that Germany needed additional land and resources and intended to acquire them through military force. At the same time, he advised caution in dealing with Britain and France, arguing that Germany should avoid a major conflict with the Western powers until it had become stronger. Ultimately, Hitler envisioned a war against the Soviet Union, whose territory he viewed as the key to gaining the Lebensraum, living space, he had described in Mein Kampf. He hoped to complete this expansionist program by 1945, but a series of international crises and aggressive actions by Nazi Germany would soon accelerate events. bringing Europe closer to war much sooner than originally planned.